Hey there, it's Andrea, and welcome to the Voice of Influence podcast. Today I have with me Elena Agaragimova. She exemplifies resilience in her journey from academia to leading roles in global corporations. Passionate about human potential, she crafts transformative talent development programs and talent pipelines. With her unique blend of empowerment and empathy, Elena drives growth in individuals and organizations within the competitive business world. In her high impact role at a tech consulting firm, Elena brings belief in the untapped capabilities of the human mind, integrating neuroscience to maximize effectiveness. She's also a sought after speaker, delivering messages that resonate with audiences from New York to Dubai. Welcome to the podcast, Elena.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So let's set this up with how did you get involved with talent development? Why is that an important topic for you?
Sure. So when I started my career in higher education, kind of academia world, it was a little bit slow moving for me. So then I was like, I was like, let me see what might make sense. So the next step that kind of made sense for me was to go into work with adult learners and executive MBA programs and so on. And then I was like, let me take it a step further. And then the natural jump for me was learning and development, like corporate learning, working with professionals, experienced professionals. And what's interesting is that when I was working with traditional kind of bachelor level students and then going into corporates, I've noticed that a lot of the challenges are actually similar. And it really comes down to just some of the things that you mentioned in my bio, right? It's like the mindset. It comes down to understanding how does the brain work when it comes to learning, when it comes to change and all those things. So although it might be slightly, there are some differences obviously between being a fresh graduate versus an experienced person, but I think across board, talent development has always just been something exciting to me. I live and breathe this topic. I always say it was a hobby that turned into a career and then a business. So I love talent development in general. And lately I've been diving into how does our physical health impact our career growth?
Mm, yeah. I mean, there are so many things that that do. That's interesting that you've been diving into that lately. What instigated that for you?
Um, I'm always surprised that with the amount of knowledge and information and resources that we have available today, and all the billions of dollars that companies spend on talent development, or like I think last year's by McKinsey studies was like $345 billion is the talent development
Yeah.
space. That's not even including well-being space, right? So amount of money that companies are spending into making sure their people are not burning out, making sure they're getting leadership development and stuff like that. But if you dive deeper into it, the money is actually going to things that are not effective, like LMS systems. Obviously, talent development is a huge field, so there's a lot of different things, but there's billions of dollars spent on things that are just not effective, like learning management systems online courses, some kind of apps that people will use, and so on. And what we don't tap into is the basics of being a human being, which is our physical health, our mindset, and the social. And if you look at over the last 5 years, we have gotten more stressed out, more burnt out, more unhealthy as a society, at least in the US, but this is also true in a lot of other Western countries. Europe is slightly different. They have a different approach to work and so on. But if we're talking about the US or North America, it's very much true. So it's like all these billions of dollars, all these resources we have, all this information, yet the problem of productivity, purpose at work, connectivity with others, loneliness, all these things that impact us as humans are getting worse. So that brought me, I said, well, like, what are we doing? And I think it's just at a point where we're solving the wrong problem. So we
Mm,
need to stop throwing money on things that are not effective because we're checking the boxes and it's trendy because there's so much tech and so many different cool things you can offer to your employees. But the question is it effective? And is that what your employee wants? Or are you just checking a box to win the, top 100 well-being or companies that care about your well-being awards? You know what I mean?
yes, yes, I do. Oh, it's um, the need to connect as humans and to understand what it means to be human. That alone is just such a huge need. It's interesting to hear, you talk about it in this way. What are your thoughts on what is more effective?
Yeah, so I'll take it from two different sides to be fair, and I think two different sides need to be considered. You have the individual and you have the organization. On the individual side, there's a level of accountability that we all need to take, right? So I think that as individuals, we need to spend a little bit more time trying to figure out what is it that we're looking for, what are our values, making sure that the companies we're joining and interviewing for are aligned with our personal values and so on. On an individual side, again, prioritizing some of the well-being habits, right? Like daily movement, eating more whole foods, eating, and I'm not talking about whole foods as the store that is super expensive and unaffordable for many people, but just like healthy foods, cooking at home, all these things that impact our performance as a person. Spending time with loved ones, not isolating ourselves, spending time in the sunshine outside, all these basic things, sleep that we neglect. Right. So that's one piece of it. And let's say you are a high performer. If you are in an organization that does not have systems in place that supports a high performer, then no matter how great you're doing in your personal life and in your own kind of individual journey, this organization is either going to burn you out anyway, and you're going to end up leaving, or if you stay, you might just be in the same boat anyway. You know, like nothing's going to change. So on the system side, a lot of companies are not creating environments where people can be at their top performers. I'll give you an example. And sometimes when as a company, I'll give you an example of some companies I work with. So you have, let's say, a project that you need to staff at a company. That company will put out a certain bid to have X amount of staff or employees that are going to be part of that project. And a lot of times, by the time the project comes around, that staffing needs change. And so what happens is you have a poorly staffed project because it was poorly bid, and now you can't afford to bring anybody else on board because for various reasons that could actually be foreseen. So now you're working, you know, a job of 10 people with 5 staff.
Mm.
So no matter how much you throw well-being at their way, they're doing the job of 10 people with half the staff. So that's an issue. That's a systemic issue. Or you have a manager who has no balance of their own, and they're then telling you as an employee, you need to go take care of the gym, or you need to take advantage of the gym membership, or you need to do X, Y, and Z because HR is pushing them to do that. But they, as a manager, sending emails at 8 p.m., 2 a.m., have a really unhealthy lifestyle, have a very stressed out attitude, and so on. So it's like, you know, it's like with kids, you can tell them what to do, but they're going to watch what you're doing. That's not a
Mm.
healthy balance. And there was a recently report by Josh Burson that came out, and we're saying how the decline of management training has been significant over the last couple of years, when in fact all these problems we're talking about stems from management and leadership. Yet the development areas for these initiatives is just on the decline
Mm.
significantly, and I think that's a big issue. So, you know, again, there's not one side to this. There's, you know, two different sides, obviously, but you know, we need to just understand that there's a responsibility on both.
Hmm. What steps do you recommend that companies take to start to recognize and I guess once they recognize that they have this responsibility, what's the next thing that they need to do?
Absolutely. So I think number one is look where you're spending your money as a company, right? So understanding where our budget's going, where are you putting your budget, and what's the ROI there? And sometimes it's qualitative, not quantitative, right? So it's a little bit difficult in the learning and development space, right? Like leadership programs and all that. It takes time to really recognize the ROI, but looking at where are you spending your time, and is it aligned to your root cause, like root problem? Because we always put band-aids on broken legs in organizations, and we do this in our personal lives as well, if you think about it, right? So I think audit where you're spending your money, and are people actually using it? There's a ton of reports where a company will spend X number of dollars on a particular initiative. Maybe it's I don't know, a gym membership. How many people actually get reimbursed for your gym membership every month? Like, is that something you need to even think about or put money towards? Or, oh, we have a relationship with this company who offers free coaching sessions from, okay, but how many people actually utilize those coaching sessions? Are you actually promoting those sessions? Are you empowering people to make time to take advantage of these learning opportunities, whether it's coaching or learning? So, you know, your LMS that is so expensive, that, you know, all that money you're spending, how many people, how many users it has, how, you know what I'm saying, etc. So like, I think just auditing where the money goes is number one. Also, looking at your managers. Statistically, manager will spend 10 years in a particular role. This is like 75% of all managers and kind of in American corporations will spend 10 years in a role before they actually get management training. So usually managers get promoted because they've been doing a job for X number of years, or they're really good from a technical perspective, or whatever industry they're in. And then they get put into a management role without any prior experience in managing people, understanding different generations that are coming into the workforce. What do they want? Understanding themselves, knowing how to manage this new persona that they have to be, because not only are they now an expert in that particular field, that they need to deliver certain knowledge and information to the stakeholders, but then also they need to make sure their team is performing, making sure their team is growing and developing their careers and so on. So there's a lot of pressure on the middle managers in particular, and very few companies are paying attention to them, or again, offering 1 week leadership course out of the whole year. And then they want them to come back and be these transformed individuals. And it just doesn't work, because going back to the human piece, we just don't function that way. If anybody who's listening, think of how you manage change, how you learn. It doesn't happen in a week. It doesn't happen in the 5-hour course in a day. It happens over time in baby small steps.
Hmm.
So I think that's for starters. And also, you as a learning development professional, how are you leading by example? And creating opportunities for people to practice these habits, whatever you want to call them, these behaviors that you want to see in an organization. And the final piece I'll mention is, in a world where we're working remotely for many, many companies, at least in the US, creating social connections for, creating space for your employees to connect in some capacity. It can be virtual, it can be in person, depending on where people are located. But I think we could also do better with that, because we're so bogged down on our work that we don't make space for these. And there's a lot more to it than just like, do it for the sake of doing it. There's a lot of obviously benefit in having, even talking to your employee or coworker on camera and so on. And I'm in tech, and I can tell you a lot of our staff don't even turn on the camera. So, gently creating spaces where people, are encouraged to turn their cameras on for some meetings, not all, right? Being mindful of, people's preferences and so on. So I think that just auditing those things is probably a good way to start.
That's a great list. Very comprehensive. Yeah, the creating space piece is it's interesting. It's a bit baffling for some people right now, because they're seeing such a desire for younger generation. They're not necessarily wanting to invest additional time into their work. They want to be able to do whatever they're going to do inside of the job. Those that work-life balance kind of thing, but also just boundaries. Um, when you think about creating space and the cost of that, if you're going to do it during the workday, or how you're going to do that, what are some different ways that you see those two mindsets, the need for it, but also the desire for boundaries, coming together in a way that could still build loyalty and connection and all that?
Yeah, so part of it is going to be around also the employee understanding the benefit that it is, what's in it for them.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the manager piece, right? So if a manager has a good relationship with their employees, frankly speaking, especially young people, a lot of young people, I interview a lot of young people, and I build talent development, like young talent development pipelines. And I can tell you, most of them, they want to learn. They want to have that flexibility. But then the next top 3 on their list is wanting to learn and progress and have a mentor and have a coach and so on. So I think the number one is having that relationship is like 80% of the work, which a lot of companies and teams do not have. So having that relationship with your employees to understand where they want to be and helping guide them to what that looks like in actions, right? And then helping them create that space. So not telling them, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And sometimes, yes, you have to do that. So to be realistic, there's different, motivational strategies and pull and push and so on. But generally speaking, starting with just the baseline of understanding what does your team member want? What are their values? What do they value? Do they value flexibility? Do they value career development? Maybe you have people who are not, that's not even their thing. So maybe you're not going to push them to do three certificates in a year. Maybe they just want to do one, and that's enough in terms of a business expectations and the personal expectation. Versus a high performer is going to be a slightly different conversation. So it's going to matter from employee to employee, but you have to have their buy-in. You have to have an employee's buy-in. And everybody has to speak the same language, which is being an organization of continuous learning. And I think that if everybody operates from that mindset from the top down, and if the manager themselves make time for these things, right? And, realistically speaking, sure, are there going to be times where, you as an employee might have to do some of this stuff after working hours or on a weekend? Yes. And are you going to be able to develop everything you want to develop during the working hours? Maybe not. But if you have that relationship and if you understand the benefit for yourself as an employee, you'll be much more inclined to take one weekend out of the year and spend on that professional development course, right? And then also balance it with something that you're going to do during working hours. I think just time management, energy management, going back to the physical health piece, is the root problem here. It's not that we cannot make space. It's we're not managing our energy effectively. Most people are not great at managing their time or prioritizing. But I would have to say, like, the energy piece is probably the energy management problem even more important than time management. So anyway, so that's what I think that's the root cause, right? Like, yes, you can like set in, you can budget into your business and into that person's whatever revenue they bring in. If they're in a specific role, you can budget that in, and when you bid your projects, you can budget that time off for them and so on. But it none of it matters. The system doesn't matter if you don't have that relationship as well. If the individual in that relationship doesn't understand the benefit of how that's going to help their career growth, whether they're with your company or with another company.
Oh, yeah. I agree. 100%. That relationship is incredibly important. When you think about the workforce right now, what do you think might be the same or different? I mean, I know that's a really broad question, but have you seen a shift? I think you have, because you have one of your podcasts is called Shift, right? But you've seen some sort of shift in the workforce, I assume, since 2020. What have you seen as something that's changed?
That's a big question. A couple of things. So something we already mentioned, flexibility. People want more flexibility. I think, people still want to get paid well and so on, but I think flexibility is probably right there in the top requests of whoever I interview, at least in the process, right? I think that's a big shift. I think the generational piece is also essential, and then the AI piece. So generational piece, I think we're still trying to figure out how to work with Gen Zs and, what do they want and how do we balance all the, 3 generations plus that are working in the same company and have different values and different expectations of a workplace. How do you make it fair for everybody? So I think that's piece we're still trying to figure out as learning and development professionals and recruiters and so on, because as recruiters, you can find great talent, but they want something that your company's, policies do not offer at the moment, or that flexibility that they want. And it's like, so I think there's a lot of disconnect there that still needs to be worked through. But I think the bigger piece is, from a recruitment perspective, is learning to recognize talent's potential versus looking at what they've done on their resume. Because with AI coming in, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to have great experience, but they might not have that exact same experience that you want in an employee. But at the same time, trying to find that somebody else out there is going to be either too costly for you, or it's just going to be looking for unicorns. So you might as well invest in that employee that you find who has the potential versus trying to find that perfect fit outside. Or you have an employee internally whose job may be becoming irrelevant or outsourced or taken over by AI, but you need to make sure that you invest in that employee. So again, here's the two pieces come in. It's always the individual and the company. As an individual, you need to be mindful of what's coming in the market for your career, what's going to be, what technology you need to learn about, how AI is going to impact your role in industry. And on the company side, how are you preparing your current staff to make sure that you do your best? We cannot predict the future, but at least you as a company do your best to maintain the staff that you have and upskill them, reskill them, whatever you want to call it. I think there's like a lot of different terms for this right nowadays, like reskill, upskill, unskill, I don't know. But
Yeah.
just make sure people are staying relevant to your
Yeah.
business. And so I think these pieces are important. And then the piece on potential, what I see a lot, I'll give you an example. I volunteer with Veterati, which is a platform that helps veterans transition to the corporate world post-military service. And I've been doing it for the last couple of years, and I've talked to a number of veterans every month about that transition. And I'm still astonished at how, one, from an individual side, it's difficult for us to tell our story about how we can take all that like rich experience in military or other backgrounds and transform into this new thing that we're doing. And at the same time, employers who look at profiles of military and say, well, it's not really our industry, instead of looking at all the other characteristics that that person brings to the table, which is resilience, managing change, being in specific situations, having great leadership skills. Military is really great at that, like having, super developed leaders, right, in a very specific way. So, and I still see that disconnect because everybody, just looks to check the boxes versus saying, let's, I can see your resume, but let's just tell me about you. Don't tell me your chronological order of a job. Tell me why you're here. What are you looking to do in the next year? Because there's so many things that we do and we possess as individuals outside of that job description, outside of our resume, that unless you can have that human to human connection with the interviewer and with the interviewee as well, it's hard to unravel that, because then you're just putting people in a box when you could be
Exactly.
missing out on all this information. So resumes, I think, they've been around since what, 1800 something. It's literally like they've been around for like since like, late 1800s, I think. We're still using them today. It's ineffective. We have to find a different way. And final thought here is that it's just going to take a little bit more time. And again, creating space for things today that are going to pay, double dividends for you in the coming future. And I think we're becoming more reactive versus proactive as companies.
So when companies are thinking about hiring, I think one of the problems that you've highlighted here is that they're looking for people that check a box or that have fit into a certain kind of box. When it sounds like, and I agree with you, I believe that we should be looking more at who a person is and what their potential, rather than they have been. But that who they have been could illuminate who they could be. And as much as fast as things are changing right now, I'm not sure why we're trying to fit people into old boxes, other than it's just hard for some people to imagine what it could look like to recruit for those skills that you were talking about before, resilience and leadership, and then also just that desire and ability to continuously learn.
Mm. Do you know, my gut feeling is the reason that we struggle with this so much, and I see this a lot in organizations, that we don't have a system in place to help people get up to speed. And we don't have a process in place to say, okay, if we are to bring somebody who knows 70% of the job, but they need that 30%, we don't have the knowledge base. We don't have some
Yes.
kind of center of excellence base. We don't have mentorship. We don't have a manager, because the manager is already doing a job of three managers. So we don't have the space to develop that person. We don't create space or opportunities to do that. Some companies do, sure,
Mhm.
right? And it's not easy to do, but again, it's like do you want to feel the pain now or later? Because you're going to feel pain regardless.
Mhm.
And of course, like, when it comes to specific jobs, if you're, I don't know, if you're a NASA engineer or something, obviously I would want you to have a little bit more than 70% of your understanding of the job, or if you're a doctor, right? But we're talking about tech careers. We're
Yeah.
talking about, finance careers. We're talking about any like other kind of roles and careers that are not specialized. those there's so much opportunity there to create. And again, if you want to use these fancy tools and you're spending all this money on these expensive LMS systems and all of that, why don't you create something in there that can help to get people up to speed? But the thing is that a lot of companies don't even have the knowledge base. They don't have that organized. They don't have those programs in place. They don't have those trainings in place that are effective, right? It's like, okay, well, go watch a video and hopefully you'll get up to speed. No, no, there needs to be a human to human interaction. There needs to be mentorship. There needs to be
Mhm.
coaching. And
Mhm.
we're not talking about a year. We're talking for most people a month to 2 months to get up to speed. If you're an experienced professional, if you meet 70% of the job description, do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and with technology, I think it's going to become more and more possible.
Yeah, knowledge sharing seems to be a really big issue right now too. So when you're talking about eh, um, basically integrating that knowledge sharing into the relationship between, I assume, the manager or somebody that has the knowledge and the person who who's just starting or changing their position. Um, I guess what surprises me all the time is that it's not already integrated as a expectation in the job that you will share your knowledge. Like there seems to be still some hoarding of knowledge. Are you seeing that? And how do you see that as being as a companies tackling that particular concern?
Yeah, I've experienced this in one capacity, and I'll share that. But I think there's two different things here. I think one is sometimes you just have an organization that's very siloed, and it's the culture of an organization to hog information,
Yeah.
and that's a culture issue. That's a top-down issue. That's something else. I think that the word expectations that you use, I think that's the key. I think a lot of people just don't know that they should be sharing, or they're not offered an opportunity to share. Something that we do with a company is it's called like working groups. So where every couple of weeks or every few weeks, a person from the team, a developer who has discovered something in a particular platform, they go on a call and an hour call and a lunch and learn setting. Sometimes it's shorter, and he or she they share with the team what they've come across. And but that initiative has to come from somewhere. So somebody has to initiate certain opportunities for people to share knowledge and to document it somewhere and to save it for future and etc. Um, Something else is, how often do you bring people together for those sessions? What else are you offering them where they can come together? Is it all virtual online? Is it live? Is it recorded? So I think just creating again a learning organization, and it's consistency is key. It's not once a year. Just like that's what I see a lot of companies do. They'll do something like once a year, or they'll have a big annual event and they'll communicate all the things, the vision and the values that they want people to do. But then it's like, well, you're not enforcing it or and reinforcing it throughout the year, right?
Yes.
So, and I think same thing with the knowledge piece is like setting expectations, but then also making sure that you remind people and create that space, that those opportunities that everybody learns from. We do this, and it's very effective, and we always have high attendance for such sessions, and it's very useful. And the final thing I think here as well that's important is values. So a lot of companies have really fancy values that, like collaboration or innovation, but there's no behavior tied in with that value. So what does that mean? What does that mean to be a collaborative company? How do you practice it? And you'll put it on a little tissue box or on the wall of your office or on your virtual background, the little taglines and values. But it's like, do people know what it takes? So knowledge sharing can be a value, right? A learning organization. What does that mean in behavior? That means that every year we expect everybody from top down to share a piece of knowledge. We expect them to present at a conference. We
Mm,
expect them to write a piece of content for our website. I don't know, I'm just making things up, but you get my
yeah.
point. Like
Yep.
there's so many things depending on the industry that you're in and the role that those people in and the personalities you have on the team that can be utilized. Podcasts, right? You go on a podcast, you talk about X, Y, and Z. It's all about part of our knowledge sharing with not only internally, but also externally.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a really, really good thing for people to be thinking about now. Thank you for that. Okay, your thoughts on personal agency at work? I guess what I'm really looking for is people feeling like they really can make a difference, that their voice matters, that sort of thing. Um, what are you seeing as best practices for helping encourage that kind of voice sharing? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I'll give you an example. So I've noticed when you have continuous engagement from managers, leaders, people tend to be a little bit more open to share. When you have, let's say let's say you host a session where team members share, talk to one another on a particular topic, and managers are not really present, leadership is not really present, and at one time a leader will pop in and everybody's quiet.
Hmm.
So it's like, so it's very difficult to be able to speak your mind, because now that says a lot about the company culture and how and the psychological safety, whatever you want to call it, with that particular leader. And it's not because that person can be, strict or bad or whatever it is. It's just it's new. So it's like, well, you don't really attend these things, but now all of a sudden you attend it. So then that it's like, well, why is this person here? So I think everybody has to be involved. And I think this whole hierarchy of, uh, uh, job roles and so on. I think we have to kind of put that aside when we talk about creating that psychological safety in an organization, so that people do feel like they want to share. Relationships, obviously. So managers, again, I just keep going back because I really think they are, not to put everything on them, but they are a very key part of all of this. And leadership. So being transparent is very important. Showcasing that even as a leader, you don't know everything. Humility, empathy, vulnerability to an extent, right? Like, needs to be present from everybody in the company. But also, I have to say that we also see a rise of, like, Gen Zs in particular, not to pick on them, but and I laugh at this all the time with my colleagues, because I'm like, if only we all had the courage that Gen Zs have to ask for what they want.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I mean, more power to you guys. I mean, really, like, I have requests from Gen Zs sometimes, and I'm like, did you really just ask me that? But I mean, with
Yeah.
all seriousness, certain things. And I'm like, listen, kudos to you for doing that, for asking for this, or for asking for the salary after, 2, 3 years of experience. Like, it's just not the reality. So I think having the cross-generational communications and mentorship and
Yes.
that coaching
Yeah.
to have like a reality check about the reality of, yes, maybe social media, maybe there's a TikToker that is doing X, Y, and Z. That's not this. This is not it, right? You
Yeah.
don't know the facts. So I think education is part of it as well. And we don't know what we don't know. And I think Gen Zs just need to have that. And, I think we could benefit from both. So from I'm an elder millennial. So, like, I think there's a lot of realities I can bring to a Gen Z, but I think Gen Z can give me a lot of, a lot of things. Like, I learn from them all the time. I'm like, you know what? I didn't even think about to ask about these things for myself, you know?
Mhm.
So I think we just need to talk more, and to make time for these interactions, and to have that open door policy, but truly open door policy and transparency. I think it's essential. And again, depending on the size of your organization, tailor it to however you feel like you need to tailor it. But when you're auditing your structure and your systems, ask, do people feel comfortable speaking up? Do people share? Do
Mhm.
you get honest feedback? Do you ask your employees? Do people share when you host a virtual session on a particular topic or some kind of training? Are they actually telling you the problems they're dealing with, the challenges they have, or is everybody quiet? Are they
Mhm.
questioning your management? Are they quite in a healthy way, right? Like, it's
Mhm.
good to question certain things. Are they inquiring, and so on. There's a lot of symptoms of a healthy organization and an unhealthy one, and transparency, openness is an easy one to recognize.
Yes, yes, yes. So, just real quick back to that comment about Gen Z, I think, and them asking for what they want. I think um, one of the things that we have to do is we have to stop being shocked by the fact that they're asking for what they want, and because I think that that's happening all the time. It's
Mhm.
everywhere. And so we need to not be shocked by it, but like you said, gently educate them, mentor them, and help them recognize, okay, I appreciate the fact that you are, seeing this for yourself, and this is the path to get there, instead of what? What are you
Yeah.
asking me? Like, just like
Yeah.
I didn't have that kind of pay until I was this old or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I've been here for
Yeah.
this long and I'm not getting paid that or whatever. And I think that I think you're right. Like, the mentorship, that willingness to enter into those kind of weird conversations that maybe you didn't realize you were going to have that kind of a conversation, but just the willingness to go there and be there with them is such a huge piece of helping them integrate and find they've certainly found a voice. The question is, how do they refine it and mature it so that it's not something that is just like too raw that, they're not going to be able to succeed.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and they're open. Like I have these
Yeah.
educational sessions with Gen Zs all the time,
Yeah.
and both ways, and they are open to it. And I never had a Gen Z who's like, well, this is unreasonable, it doesn't make sense. Like most of the time, like if you just explain yourself, like, oh, okay, I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
And I think just keeping it real with them and transparent, I think that's the key, and they're
They
pretty
need,
reasonable.
they need to know how things work.
Yeah.
If you can point out this is how it works, but then you also kind of have to know how it works. It's not just
Yes.
arbitrary. It's not just well, when I feel like you deserve a raise, I'm going to give you a raise
Mhm.
or a promotion. Like there are things that you can do to get ready for that. And I I think that those kind of conversations, to your point, for the whole entire conversation that we've had today, it just takes the investment of time and relationship and conversation, but what dividends it could pay. We have to be proactive about this sort of thing.
Absolutely. And I always go back to just the human piece.
Yeah.
We are at our best when we're physically feeling good, our mindset is in the right place, and we have a social community support, connections with others, healthy family life, or, some kind of joy in life, community. Again, it doesn't have to be family, but maybe community. We're social beings, and we forgot that. And over the last few years, we just kind of became more isolated and so on. And something interesting I heard somebody say actually the other day that kind of changed my perspective on the online world. So how there's a lot of like kind of saying, well, we're just all ruined because of social media, especially the young people. And somebody mentioned something that was pretty interesting. They said that the young people, some of them, when they're, let's say, if they're bullied at school or something, prior to technology, they didn't really have an outlet, but now they can go in one of these video games and have their own little community of friends. And
Hmm.
that's still, that's still like relationships. And to them, that's a connection in their own way. And that saves them from whatever negative things they might be experiencing in their life at school or at home and so on. So I think, I'm changing my mind about technology. I think it's about educating uh, even us, like as adults. I mean, I have to check myself as well sometimes, but did I spend too much time on social media today? So I think educating about having that balance between, being present in your life and making sure that you're not negatively impacted by technology, but then where can you utilize it, where it is improving your life, it is making you more productive, healthier, engaged, and so on. So I think it's just, again, just goes back to educating and that human to human connection. And for better or for worse, for some people, that human to human connection is virtual of some sort.
Yeah. I mean, we have to honor and respect the experience of other people, period.
Right.
I mean, if we don't, you're not going to have a voice with them. So,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, this has been such a wonderful conversation. You are a brilliant and so articulate. So good to visit with you today, Elena. How can people get in contact with you or listen to your podcasts? What do you recommend?
I hang out the most on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, Elena Agaragimova, or you can just Google my name and you'll know more about me than you ever care to. So very easy to find if you have my name.
Okay. Well, and we'll link to your LinkedIn and in the show notes. And then one last question for you. So, what last piece of advice would you want to give to somebody who wants to have a voice of influence?
I'll go back to the basics. Audit your physical health, your mindset, and your social things, because that's all. If you're not taking care of those things, it's very difficult to have influence with yourself or anything else that you might be doing.
Mm. Thank you so much for being a voice of influence for our listeners today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.